Welcome to the Professionals of the Inland Empire show with your host, John Tulac.
Everyone, and welcome to Professionals of the Inland Empire, which we professionally and affectionately call PI. And I am very happy to be doing this podcast with people that I know, like, trust, and refer business to, because that's what our networking provisors group is all about. And most of my guests have been members of provisors. And we are a year old this May in terms of conducting this podcast. So a bit of a celebration in that respect. We're going strong, and we thank you all for your interest and your viewing and your support. So today I am happy to have with me Bruce Hoffman and Josh Arce, who are going to be focusing on what they do for a living and how they help you. But there's a wellness theme connected to this today. Bruce focuses on the wellness of your business in terms of optimizing your profitability. And Josh focuses on the health and well-being of yourself and your family. And you know, you don't have to think about it really hard to see how those two things can go together. So gentlemen, welcome to Professionals of the Inland Empire. And ladies and gentlemen, sit back, enjoy a slice of pie. Here we go. Bruce, let's start with you. Tell us who you are and what you do and how you got there.
Got it. Hey, nice to be here. Bruce Hoffman. I'm the founder of OptimizePros.ai, and we focus, like John said, on efficiency and helping businesses to run more smoothly. I often work with them in places where they really don't know what they don't know about AI, and they think that they have to implement something. And really, we're focused on what is the business problems that need to get solved first, and then we come back and look at the tools that make sense for their specific challenges. I got here. Wow, it's been a career of working in custom software development for many different companies, and then really working with a lot of tech startups in the healthcare space, and really then beginning to work with businesses, just really understanding where the current tools and fast moving capabilities can help them.
Okay, so I know that when you first started doing this, you weren't focused on AI because AI wasn't a thing. So tell us how you got AI integrated into profit optimization.
Yeah, well, it's actually a good question. So I've really been involved in AI for about 20 years. So, my focus was always on data and how data could be used to help solve things in an organization. Working in the Kelley Blue Book, Cox Automotive family, we focused a lot on, how to build out the transactions and the data that went along with it, and, worked and had both data science and development teams, working with me there. And, this AI today is really a whole new generation that's sped up like how products are developed and how, solutions can be answered, before you even think of them. It's so amorphous that, it can be just about anything to anybody right now. And just, staying on top of maybe 5% of it, puts you in what's considered an expert, even though really nobody is a true expert these days in this space.
And it is evolving so quickly. And what we think of as AI is something that's, as a term, relatively new, but we can go way back to punching cards, and folks were called data processors. And then we use computers more to be processing that data. And then we had relational databases and FileMaker and all these things that, were software that took some time to learn. They weren't easy things to learn. But in the background all this time, we were using technology to help us learn and understand data. It's just that now it's something that everybody has to confront, right?
Yeah, I mean, well, they don't have to confront it. You can still ignore it if you'd like to. But it
Not
can
a good
be
idea, right?
just about anything to anybody. All you got to do is participate. You can go write a book, get a recipe, figure out how to lose weight, write a program, when you've never done that before. Like I said, it's this opened up of the capabilities have become, I just want to know what's possible. And in whatever subject. And that's what's kind of crazy is the training went so far and wide that you can do just about anything, whether good or bad.
Good, indeed. I mean, I was reading today about how AI can actually be a danger because it's easier to use it to develop pathogenic kind of things. So bioterrorism possibilities are enhanced because people have access to AI. I don't need to read stuff like that. I'd rather start with the sports or the comics, right?
Or at least the positive side of it, like, where it's going to help cure diseases or, take us to the stars.
Exactly. So AI in so many ways is something that can be used as a positive tool. It enhances our capabilities, but it can also be a crutch, which is how I see a lot of business people using it. So how do you show them the way, Bruce, with adapting to a new technology, using something that can really enhance, but you have to understand what it is first before you can use it. That's where you come in, right?
Yeah, I mean, and I'll go back to the beginning. It's really about like, what is the business challenge? Often, in speaking to, in the legal space, it's like, hey, I don't really have access to my own data. I don't know how. It's like I know I wrote this thing with this on a certain place at a certain time, and I'd like to actually reuse that in the future, but I don't know how to actually go find it.
Okay.
Right?
And then again, there are a lot of tools where they really do need someone with the expertise to use them for you. I mean, I have no mechanical aptitude. That's why I'm going to hire a plumber. If I have a plumbing problem. Yeah, I can watch the video, but I don't trust myself with a wrench. I mean,
Yeah, that's right. Even though the AI will now walk you through it step by step by step, right? And
right.
anything that you don't know, you just ask. Well, I don't know how to, hold a screwdriver, and it will give you instructions on how they actually, or a wrench. It'll give you instructions on how to actually hold the wrench without hurting yourself.
But the AI won't dry out my carpet after I flood it.
No, no, but it will, tell you what to go do.
Tell you what to, yeah, yeah. I have plenty of people who tell me what to go do. So you talk about optimization, which is usually connected with efficiency. Is it all about efficiency, Bruce, or is resilience an important aspect of the deliverables?
It's kind of interesting. The Everybody's going after how can I do things faster, better, but not looking often at like the long term. We often, as we develop things, it's like, how do you actually support this thing now that you've created? Because if this company you work with has nobody technical in house, now you've given them something that requires, somebody else to continue to work with them. I think that there are, wherever they talk about a lot of roles being eliminated, I think there's a lot of new roles for people who are going to learn the tools and become good with them, inside. And it's a critical, it hasn't changed in the world of software. You have to have advocates that exist in the business, and it has to be kind of wide. It can't just be like a tiny little spot where, hey, leadership chose we're going to go do this thing and everybody get on board. Well, that can work in some companies, but generally it's going to fail if that was the only case and there's no ground up, learning
Right.
and support.
And then again, you need the experts at these things to be able to work with you, either inside the company. I mean, a lot of bigger companies will have IT people, have a whole IT department to deal with the massive number of software programs and other things they may have to do. Because I mean, your C-suite people aren't going to be doing this stuff. They're relying on somebody else to do it for them. So the need for you and your services and other experts to handle all this stuff seems to me to be a natural thing that a business person simply needs to build into the plan, right?
Yeah, and they do. I mean, although there will be the advent of agents that do the things that we're doing from the tech and consulting perspective. And I've seen some CEOs that have been just going out and building all these agents to run their company rather than hiring people. And
Right.
that's actually, it's one of the areas that we're ideating on right now is like, how can we create agents that do the support work, not only answering questions for the end users, but actually going in and starting to fix the programs when they're bugs.
Well, I know that agents can be a lot better than the typical customer support chat bots that we deal with. I mean, they don't, if you ask a question, you put something in it doesn't understand, it won't admit it doesn't understand. The better ones will,
Yeah.
but you don't get very far. And then, I am told that if you start cussing in the chat bot to the chat bot, they will cut you off.
Yeah, yeah. I had one that I set up, and if she constantly tried to get you down a path, and if you didn't go down that path, eventually she would just say, "Okay, we're done." So basically, she was qualifying you down a certain path, right?
Right.
You didn't qualify, then she just kicked you off.
So Josh, let me turn to you, with this segue that since I brought it up, I'll quote Mark Twain and say what he said was that cursing offers solace not found in prayer. And we lose track of our wellness if we lose our cool, right? So,
Correct.
so tell us who you are and what you do and how you got there.
Well, first, thank you, John, for inviting me. Yes, so Joshua Arce here. I'm the co-founder of the Brain Cell. We're a cognitive and body assessment company that helps individuals who are primarily income earners that are looking for longevity, but also looking for quality of life, that they can basically, not so much extend, but really get a clear view of what it is to be well and to preserve that cognitive independence. And so we are an assessment company. We have an FDA approved machine that allows us to do a 15 to 20-minute screening that gives us a core cognitive reading out based on age and gender. And then we also have a couple other devices that give us body matrix that allow us to kind of give the person a holistic view of where they cognitively and body-wise are dealing with what they're dealing with as far as compared to their peers and to where their goals may be. And so a lot of this came out of my own experiences with my parents. I had a mother who was probably checked off every box that was to be checked for wrong decisions to be made. And so she had unfortunately a much shorter life than she should have, and really just didn't have a clear understanding. And the medical system was basically focused on triage and dealing with what things came up rather than looking at root cause issues. And my father had a cognitive disorder, but also prior to that, he was in an age range where he wasn't identified as being on the spectrum, but there was a lot of items that he dealt with that really, if he had known better how to kind of deal with the situation that he came up through his life, he could have had a much better life. And so it really came out of those. My parents are really my why, and then also my why was also my own health. I had I've been very fortunate to be very successful, but about 6 years ago was about 537 pounds, and really didn't have much of a future. Didn't do any good to earn money because I wasn't going to probably live long enough to spend it. And so all of those three perspectives of life kind of focused me on how do I take emotion, which is a powerful catalyst for change, and add in the second part, which is to me is logic and quantitative data, and help people make realistic goals that can give them a better life. And so that's kind of how the brain cell was born. So
Wow,
Wow,
that's
I
really
agree.
something. So, so this is a machine that you say scans, and so I would guess then that there is some kind of software associated with it that then interprets what the scan is. How does a scan work? Is a physical thing that you're connected to in some way, right?
yeah, so it looks very much similar to our modern laptop. It has a dial that has adaptive technology in it that you wear headphones and it asks you questions and you answer using the dial. And the dial, not to get too technical, but the dial as it moves, it's tracking how quickly your fine gross motor is, and so it's It looks very much like a laptop, and it's asking you questions, and it's self-guided, and it's randomized. And so it is the modern tool that's replacing, if you're familiar with the MoCA, which is commonly used in medical practices. It's the Montreal Cognitive Assessment. It's oral, and it's not randomized, and so there's limitations because you can't necessarily track cognitive function through the MoCA screening more than twice a year, because you simply the brain retains certain information, and so because it's not randomized, here there's limitations. Whereas with CogniView, which is the machine we use, because it's randomized, because it's completely independent, there's less hindrances into being able to do multiple screenings throughout the year to kind of determine whether or not where you're functioning in that moment. And then the other device is more about looking at body function, and so it's a device that you would stand on. There's a grip indicator when we deal with and it tracks a lot of the more of the body matrix, so brain and body.
So you do this scan, and the scan gives you these answers, is what it's detecting and picking up. And is that then something that you evaluate and share with the participant, or is that something that's kind of a self-guided tour?
So we do. So we definitely try to stay in our lane. We're wellness. So we deal with, the results are delivered in a very digestible manner. As far as the cognitive side, it gives you a reading and it tells you exactly where you fall, and it uses very common language that someone could look at and kind of indicate whether or not there's some serious issues. And if you fall too far below the norm, because it is FDA approved, there's a physician's portal. We encourage you to go back and see your PCP, and they can then do a much deeper dive if there's major areas of concern. And so a lot of times, my experience has been, for most autonomous adults, there's peaks and valleys. And so if there's 4 or 5 main cognitive areas that we're testing, there may be one that may fall into somewhere where it may be of a concern. And so that really would then precipitate them going to see a physician. If they do not want to see a physician or don't have a physician for some reason, we do provide them with resources, licensed professionals, doctors, and other such that privately that they can go see. And we've seen a little bit of an uptick in that because there are, especially on the cognitive side, there are sometimes some concerns because of insurability. Let's say there's a high income earner that maybe in their future may be looking at life insurance and other things, and they want to stay out of the medical index, the MIB. That when you go and see your doctor, anything that you discuss with your doctor, there's a lot of those record and items go into your medical index. And so if there's a concern there, we can provide them with resources for privately speaking with medical professionals that would stay outside that index.
Okay. And is this then all HIPAA protected in terms of what you're doing with the customer or with the client? How would you call it? Client, I guess.
Client, yeah, because it is HIPAA protected in the sense that it's outside of the medical index, and so we would hold to those HIPAA standards as far as we would not necessarily be. We wouldn't be necessarily discoverable as in terms of the world you live in. It would be we're not going to be in any kind of index where they could then drop a subpoena on us for records. And because it's a client relationship, we would I would imagine we've never dealt with that, but I would imagine if there were a subpoena, we would just simply our terms in agreement is with the individual, so.
Right. They would have to have the opportunity to say, no, we want to prevent that from being released. Sure.
Yeah.
So has this been embraced by psychiatrists, therapists, psychologists as a tool? Are they working with you on this with individuals?
So I will tell you, when we're 3 years old, and so I will say we are definitely it's taken us those first 2 years to really hone in on a particular target market. When I started, I would have thought it would be used by older adults in retirement, and it's still a passion area of mine to deal with, but we have kind of really only had really good success with 40 plus year-old women. That's kind of 80, almost 80, nearly 90% of who we deal with. And we actually have been really direct to consumer. We have clients that have come in that then will give their results to their doctor, and we've had some minor success with doctors and other professionals referring in, but for the most part it's been word of mouth for that demographic, because they tend to be more forward thinking. I think for myself as a man, I think I'm looking at it a lot of times. There's kind of a general belief of like, what I don't know can't hurt me, and that's been antidotally different when it comes to women. It's been more of a proactive approach. A lot of times they're in a role of caregiving for themselves, for their spouse, and for maybe even parents, and so they've been a little bit more proactive individually, and then they tend to be good referrers, but of their own peers. So I know that's kind of a long-winded answer. I hope that.
No, this is quite fascinating, actually. Bruce, I want to go back to you on this. Obviously, you see
Yeah, I
it.
want to talk about his thing.
We we all see this where you come in to help somebody, and you can see their business is in trouble. And it doesn't take long to figure out the reason the business is in trouble is that somebody who's running the business is personally in trouble, either with health issues or mental health issues, and that's impacting what's going on in their business. I mean, how do you sell wellness? You got to take care of yourself before you can take care of your business and your customers or your clients, right?
It would be good to, use Joshua. What's your tool called again? The
So the cognitive portion is called Cogniview,
cognitive view.
and we're a vendor for them, so they're nationwide. And then the body portion is we use the InBody systems. So.
So that's thing. Okay, so it is something you created, though.
Well, no, so it's more the compilation. Nothing is particularly proprietary to us, but it's the
Ah,
concept is novel
okay.
because for the most part, InBody has been used in fitness. I don't think very accurately, because I think it gives a lot more information than generally practitioners in the gym space are able to kind of use. And then the CogniView was originally designed for in-office physicians, but the billing world has kind of prevented that because CMS, in their infinite wisdom for Medicare, has told physicians they're only going to reimburse $5, and so that kind of closed out all the physicians even considering using it.
Oh well.
So yeah.
Yeah, I would think that it would be good to have the leaders of the companies that I talk to go through this process before we actually start looking at, you know, how we're going to run how we're going to make changes to the business. It kind of give you like a better view of where they were. Probably none of them would agree to it, but some might. That demographic that you have, I think there's a lot of business leaders that fall into that space. Um,
You raise a good point, Bruce, because I find that sometimes working with a new client, and typically the referral is someone who's already in trouble with something, as opposed to I want to start by doing it right
right.
from the very beginning, the ideal referral. But then you start asking questions, and I actually have a legal audit process. I mean, how's your legal health? Because I need to determine that to know how I can work with you and how I can fix certain things. And the ones who are in trouble are generally not open to a wide number of questions. They just fix my
Right.
problem.
Yeah, yeah. It's like you go in
You're missing
and
the point, right?
you have a
You got to have
plan,
the same
right,
issue, right?
of how you're going to, learn and, and make recommendations. And that it tends to get thrown out like early on if the person or if the leadership is not super receptive to looking at, a wider view rather than, hey, I've got this issue. Can you go solve it? Oh, and then by the way, can you go solve this other thing while you're at it? That's, that's how the longer term clients tend to go.
Right. Well, I won't mention any names, but I had three very prominent doctors in a medical group, and they needed to restructure their business side. which I did, but they weren't in agreement on how they wanted things. So we had multiple meetings. And then also in the meetings, they would bring up some other business issue and we would talk about that. So all of which got billed. And at the end, I figured out a very straightforward, very elegant restructuring solution. And they didn't want to pay the bill. Billing is like, how could you charge so much for what is so obvious? It's like, that's like sending them a letter saying, thank you, doctor, for saving my life. But did the operation have to cost so much? And it's like, and I know I asked you about some other things, but I didn't expect you to charge me for them. You have to run across some of that in terms of trying to help people. It's like they're resistant to the help that they absolutely need.
Yeah. Well, I was having that exact conversation, yesterday with a lawyer that introduced me to a business, and the business is an early stage, and um, I think they want to listen to what I have to say, but that will be the big determination of like, because where they're at, there's a lot of compliance and regulation for them to even be able to test. And I can go build it for them, make it happen, but I'm not convinced unless they do all the other things, it'll ever be viable. Right. So there's a lot of that up for,
Right.
and people just want to create. They don't want to do all of the other things that go along with the creation. And the list that goes along with the creation is actually bigger generally than the creation itself by far.
Yeah, it's the linkage of things that they don't integrate, things that are really in plain view. It's like this relates to that. If you don't fix this, you're not going to be satisfied with what I do for you here. These things are
Not a plug
like,
so much for you, John, but if you bring in legal at the beginning,
yes,
you're much more likely to handle whatever you needed to do from compliance for your product at the end, right? If you go build it and then you go the other direction, you're like, and that's often when we get called in. But
the same issues, the same problems, just
yeah,
different focus. But your message about optimizing profits is going to resonate, I would think, with any forward-thinking business person, in perhaps a much more straightforward manner than let me keep you out of legal trouble. That preventive aspect makes absolute logical sense, but it doesn't have the same emotional impact as I'm in trouble, get me out of it.
yeah, that is true. Yeah, usually, yeah, the better clients are not in trouble for me.
Yeah,
They
exactly.
are in that earlier to mid stage, and they've got a solid vision, and they're really just trying to figure out what is the execution, that goes along
Exactly.
with it.
And so, Josh, I would imagine at this stage where you are with this, you probably have somewhat of the same thing. The people aren't going to come to you to keep from getting mentally ill or physically ill or what have you. They're going to
Right.
come to you because there's something wrong with me and my doctor can't figure it out, kind of thing, right?
Well, a lot of times that tends to be the where people go originally when they talk to us. But our demographic that we've had the most success with is really those who are mainly looking for proactive health improvement. And so we've had a sweet spot with a subsect of the population that are known as biohackers, if you're familiar with the term. Those who are looking for longevity and they're looking for that proactive approach. We the a lot of times we will get referrals from folks that post-diagnosis of something, and we just have to remind them we're not a medical model, we're more of a wellness model. And so it's we've had to really drive forward with education, and getting people to where, like, I'll get commonly people will say, oh, I think you can help my parents. And I said, yeah, I can help anyone over the age of 18. And we're looking for folks that are really proactive. If you're already seeing signs of, let's just take cognitive decline, we're glad to aid and help, and there are resources we can connect them with. But really, we're looking for that person that year over year is looking for an improvement. They're really looking for that proactive approach. So, again, yeah, a lot of times it's definitely been a learning curve for us, because a lot of times people only think of us when they start to see something, and it's like, okay, we definitely will be glad to examine it, but and when I originally started the business, we consulted with my physician, who's a personal friend, and she's a medical doctor that deals with physical rehabilitation. So a lot of times she's dealing with those who are in rehab situations, and part of what we talked about is the need for year over year having baselines, so that when something does happen, if it does, God forbid, that we have baselines to refer back to. Because one of the biggest complaints she deals with her colleagues is after an injury, whether it's something like a stroke, or if there's a cognitive decline, or there's a physical, Parkinson's diagnosis, something that has a physical element to it. The rehab staff have a real difficulty, because all of the baseline information is anecdotal. It's how was he or she before. And we're trying to build a culture where if someone who's year over year for the last 3 years has had baseline testing, and maybe it was nothing that was remarkable where they wanted to make a change, but it's baseline that they simply took and shelved, and God forbid if something did happen, you're handing a rehab staff 3 years of baseline testing where they can really look at, say, okay, this is a real quantitative approach of where they were and how do we get them back to that. So that's been another angle that we've attempted to kind of educate the public on.
Okay. So Bruce, we're hearing that there is a possibility that we can adapt this for a proactive clientele.
Yes.
Yeah, this is
does
good to
sound
know.
like it. I think
The other good thing
we
to
all
know
need
is
to be
that,
tested now, right?
yeah, and that biohacker is not a negative thing; it's a positive thing.
No, I mean, if you know about things, you have an opportunity to do something about it, right?
Indeed.
There's
Well, this has been fascinating, gentlemen. I am very happy that you agreed to be guests on the Professionals of the Inland Empire podcast today. I want to thank you for your time, and we are just about out of it for today. So once again, ladies and gentlemen, this is Professionals of the Inland Empire. Thanks for your kind attention. We'll be back next week with another episode. So long for now.
Thanks for watching or listening to, depending on the case, the Professionals of the Inland Empire show with your host, John W. Tulac. If you have a suggestion for a guest, email him at jwtulac, that's JWTULAC, @gmail.com. jwtulac @gmail.com.